What's up, guys and gals? Welcome back. We are on the next chapter. I believe it's chapter 6. It's the chapter that's called What Nobody Saw. This chapter is 30 pages long, I believe. It's about the same amount as the last one. If you're just tuning in, the last chapter we saw or read was about this whole true crime case thing going on, right, with Jin's dad and this student gone missing from their school when they went to high school. The crazy guy from the ward and the principal, apparently they were all in the same grade level or went to school at the same time, but they associated with each other, and we don't know how, we don't know why, we don't know what happened to the missing kid, but the boys are starting to suspect that something's going on, right? Something happened. They don't know who to turn to, who to ask, so they're headed to go ask Jin about the map of the soul and about his dad and the crooked politics of what's going on in the city. It was a great read. I'm interested to see what happens in this chapter. This book is flying by. For those of you who are just tuning in, we're reading the notes too, catching up on everything, and we are on the chapter What Nobody Saw. So sit back, enjoy yourself, grab a drink, grab a snack, and I'm gonna read through this for you guys. You guys can follow along with the pages next to me, and hopefully enjoy. Alright. So the last entry we read was on July 23rd. We're on to the next day, which is July 24th. First entry is by Taehyung, and this is in year 22. All the same year. This whole book has been all the same year. 2 weeks ago today, we decided to throw Jungkook a party to celebrate his being discharged from the hospital. We said, let's throw a party when Jungkook comes out of the hospital, and we completely forgot about it. That's horrible. With so many things that had happened since then, I'd gone everywhere in Songju City with Namjoon and looking for the building, including the classroom. On top of everything, the redevelopment plan had turned the whole city upside down. I didn't know how time passed by so fast, and I'd only remembered Jungkook's last day in the hospital the day before. We had just left the classroom, and while talking about how to ask Seokjin about his father, someone said we should ask him at Jungkook's welcome back party. Will Seokjin show up? We have to make him. How? I don't know. We all realized it only then. Jungkook would be coming home from the hospital tomorrow. We looked at each other surprised. The truth was that none of us paid much attention to Jungkook. We had been preoccupied because of Seokjin, but that did not change the fact that we had been forgetful of Jungkook. Yeah, that's horrible. Should I give him a call? When I said that, Namjoon said no. It's past midnight. Let's throw him an awesome party. Osuk, you take care of the food as always. Taehyung, how about bringing party hats and stuff? Jimin? And Jimin said, I'll get him a present. He'll like a sketchbook. How about you, Yoongi? When Namjoon asked, Yoongi's face broke into a smile as he said, my presence at the party will be a present. Namjoon, what are you going to do? Yoongi, I'm providing the place for the party. Alright, blank space and time, right? Skipping a scene. We said to meet for the welcome party at 7 in the evening the next day. I hung about the gas station waiting for Namjoon to get off work. We have to hurry. They let him out so late. We're not going to make it, said Namjoon. He bowed a goodbye to his boss and walked towards me. I stood up. We'll get there after 7. We walked side by side toward Namjoon's container. Do you think Seokjin will come? Namjoon answered. I'm not sure, but I think he'll probably come. I texted him. What did you say in the text? We should talk about the map of the soul. That's not a good way to get him to come to the party, right? Isn't that what he's avoiding talking about? Alright, Jimin says, July 24th, year 22, same day. I opened the container door and walked in to find no one. The air inside, heated by the afternoon sun, rushed out as if it had waited for the door to open. I fumbled to turn on the light. Fluorescent light flickered balefully before the room finally became bright. I was 10 minutes late, but I was the first one there. I turned on the fan and looked at my watch. 10 past 7. What happened to everyone? Did something happen? Were they on their way here or not? The place looked too empty to have a party. I gave a quick look around the place, but there wasn't anything I could use to make the place more presentable for the party. There was some of Namjoon's stuff, but definitely no balloons or party hats. On some pieces of paper I wrote welcome back home and Jungkook and taped them to the wall. But they only made the place look more pathetic. I should have done a better job writing those words. I regretted it as I straightened the papers on the wall. I checked the chat room to make sure that everyone was on their way. 10 more minutes passed. A train passed by shaking the whole container. Seeing the whole world shaking through the open door, I thought back on the day when I had banged open the hospital door and run away. Could I have done it if Taehyung, Jungkook, and all the others weren't there for me? Just because there's a door, an open door, doesn't mean that you can walk through it and step out from where you are. Maybe Seokjin was trapped somewhere, waiting for someone to knock on the door. Nothing was certain. I wasn't sure if we could help him. I wish the small pieces of information we had stumbled upon would provide some hints. When I was thinking this, the container door finally opened. "There's only you here," said Yoongi. J-Hope's entry same day. Ever since it was announced that Yeonji Children's Home was included in the redevelopment plan, the orphanage people had been fighting a war every day. A war without firing any bullets, a war fought in silence and growing fear. The city and the people working for Assemblyman Kim Jong-jun refused to answer any of our questions. We asked them to release the relocation plan for Yeonji Children's Home. Not a difficult request, but their silence spoke louder than any words. If they had a plan, they would have competed to be the first one to make the announcement. Yeonji Children's Home would be relocated to so-and-so area, but they did not say anything. By not saying anything, they made it clear that they meant to send the kids to different institutions. I don't know who threw the egg, one of the orphanage aunts or someone who grew up there. Nobody knows who started the fight. The protesters, well, it would be a stretch to call the orphanage people protesters, but they got into a physical fight with the aides. What took place couldn't really be described as a physical fight. We always felt intimidated by others, even when we tried to act confident. The world saw us as pitiful. People saw us as either dangerous or pathetic, people who lived off of others' taxes. One of the orphanage aunts tumbled down the stairs, and several older kids were taken away by the police. One aunt collapsed and was taken to the hospital. Even the aunt who was resting from the orphanage work due to her illness showed up at the city hall. I only found out about all this when I was almost done with my shift. Things were busy at work with too many customers today. Dragging my bad leg, I headed to the hospital. Everyone was squatting in front of the surgery room. They all looked bruised up. Even then, they were surprised by my leg. "What happened to your leg? How did you get hurt?" I said, "I fell on the slippery street the other day. It's nothing." After giving them a quick answer, I sat next to my aunts. It didn't take me long to figure out though. Everyone felt broken not from any physical pain but from a sense of defeat. The fighting will get us nowhere. This self-defeatist attitude that had been with us for so long, that now was ingrained deep in our minds. The silence in the hospital hallway was suffocating. No one spoke. Can we win this fight? What can I do? I couldn't even cry. Then I heard my phone ringing with a text from Taehyung. "Where are you? Everyone is here with Seokjin's picture attached." Okay. Namjoon. Same day entry, right? They're probably going to repeat like this, I'm assuming. After waiting for Hoseok, who didn't text us back, we started the party without him. Because Hoseok wasn't there, we had no cake or candles. With Jungkook sitting in the center, we awkwardly clapped and sang a song. "Welcome back home, dear Jungkook." Yoongi flicked his lighter instead of candles. "Make your wish here." When Jungkook stayed motionless with his eyes fixed on the lighter, Yoongi said, "So, you got no wish? Then make a wish not to get hurt again," and the papers on the wall flat because of the fan. Seokjin sat leaning against the wall the whole time, looking like someone who had been dragged there against his will. He watched us and then checked the time on his watch out of boredom. I asked him, "What are you thinking?" Seokjin slowly turned around. My heart sank seeing his cold eyes. He looked different compared to when I had first met him at the gas station or at the street pub a couple days ago. He seemed colder now. He asked about the map of the soul the last time. Hearing the map of the soul, Seokjin's eyes changed. "Ask your dad about it." Seokjin scowled. He must have thought I was just pulling things out of a hat. When I was about to explain, Hoseok rushed in. "I didn't think you'd come." Hoseok paid no attention to what Jimin said and walked across the container and went straight to Seokjin. He wasn't even limping. Hoseok said, "We need to talk," but Seokjin pushed away Hoseok's hand and said in a low voice, "I got nothing to say." "If you have something to say, say it here." The tension between the two was palpable. Hoseok said in a trembling voice, "Can you please tell your dad to take Yeonji Children's Home out of the redevelopment plan? If that's too difficult, can he look for a place where we can relocate together? He's your dad, you can ask him." Hosuk had never looked so desperate. Seokjin listened without moving a muscle and said, "It's grown-up business." The air inside the container seemed still. Dumbfounded, Hosuk stared at Jin. Hosuk spoke in a very low voice. "You know what the place means to me. How could you talk to me as if talking to a stranger? How could you?" For an instant, Seokjin flinched. He scowled again and rubbed his temples. He pushed his hand against the wall and stood up. "Until when do I have to look after you guys? Can you please learn to do things by yourselves?" And Seokjin banged open the door and left. What an asshole, dude. What's going on with him? Something's up. Something's up. Alright. Jungkook's entry for the same day, July 24th, year 22. Seokjin took off. Taehyung followed him, and after exchanging glances, the others followed him too. Taehyung said something to Seokjin, but he didn't seem to be listening. I stood behind everyone and watched Seokjin getting into his car. The car backed away and turned. The light coming out of the container shined on Seokjin's car. The trace of an accident on the car bumper was visible for a short time, and disappeared in the dark. I saw the scratch on the bumper, and strangely I didn't feel anything. No shock, no boiling anger. It wasn't difficult to come to terms with either. Everything became abundantly clear now. The top of Seokjin's car disappearing out of sight merged with the headlights that came at me that night. The feeling of being lifted up in the air, the moment when I couldn't even swallow my own saliva, the fear of having sudden convulsions, the unbearable coldness that scattered my consciousness, the shadow of death lurking about, and the trace of the accident I saw on the car bumper at the moment. I walked back into the container. I felt a twinge in the injured leg. The others were talking about stuff I knew nothing about. They had no thought of coming back in. Poor Jungkook, he's being left out of everything. Jin's entry, same day, July 24th. It was a waste of time. I shouldn't have even gone there. Instead of attending another redevelopment meeting, I went to Jungkook's party because Namjoon wanted to talk about the map of the soul. I hoped that there would be a clue to get me out of this endless pain, but all I heard was Hosuk begging me to save his orphanage. I stepped on the accelerator. Why do they always want something from me? Why can't they take care of things by themselves? Why do I have to save them? I was sick and tired of it, and why do I save them again and again when they walk back into a mire of desperation after I bailed them out of there? Don't waste your time on a useless pursuit. I remembered what my dad had told me. Is there a way to end this without having saved anyone? Gotta save yourself, bro. Turning into a monster. Okay. Taehyung's entry, same day, July 24th. After the party, I came back to my place. A place of hell that I was used to. Empty bottles, cups, and plates rolling about on the floor, and the man crumbled in a helpless heap in the corner, cussing out of habit. My dad. Nothing to be surprised at, but I screamed when I saw my sister waddling around and sweeping up the broken bottles. Startled, she turned around. She resembled Mom. She was just like Mom. Skinny, her stooped back, but also a sense of helplessness. She took after everything in Mom except in the selfishness of abandoning me. That was what she should have taken after. Taehyung, she said as she stood up. Hearing her feeble voice, I just couldn't stand it any longer. I'm sick of this, I yelled at her and ran out. I walked any which way. I wasn't headed anywhere. It was night, but the wind felt hot and wet. With every step, my head was thumping. I panted and my face flushed, but I couldn't stop. I walked as if I was running, and I ran as if I was walking. And I stopped and stamped my feet, screaming. Still, I couldn't calm down. I crossed the road and saw a familiar silhouette. It was Jungkook. I thought our eyes met, but Jungkook spun on his heels and soon became a blur. I thought it was just as well. I didn't want him to see me like this. I started walking again. I cut across the railway and the bridge. First place I stopped when I saw the road passed for Munhyun City. Welcome to Munhyun City, a lovely place to live. Only then did I realize I was going to my mom. I had got her address when I had gone to see my uncle a couple of days ago. He stopped me and shoved a piece of paper in my hand. When I opened the note, there was an address scribbled down in haste. Munhyun City, Bakgu, Bogwon-jiri, Apartments, 103-306. Forgive me, okay? I wish I knew how to say it. I knew right away it was my mom's address. Without a word, I shoved the note into my pocket. When I got out of the alley, I crumpled it and threw it away. Ever since that day, I'd been thinking about apartment 103-306. I saw the address only once, but it became engraved in my head, the public housing apartment across the busy downtown area of Munhyun City, Bagu. I found myself searching for ways to get there, cross the railway, cross the bridge, and walking through downtown. I walked down the path in my head. When I get to apartment 103-306 and the door opens, what will the inside look like? Will my mom be happy or unhappy? My mind followed an endless chain of thoughts. I hoped my mom would be happy. Since she left us, she should at least be living a better life. That way, I could hate her without having to pity her. I imagined her finally at peace with her life. A life that wasn't bound by something. A life in which she was responsible only for her life. A life in which she had no bruises on her arms or legs, and she spent her time after work tending her flowers on the veranda while sipping on a cup of tea. The life of selfish stability in which she would sometimes remember me and my sister only to forget us soon thereafter. It was past midnight, but the downtown area was brightly lit as in broad daylight. I left the people and cars whirring by me and walked into the dark alley off the back street. It was the quickest route to my mom's apartment. The alley was a completely different world. Dark and grim streets, flickering streetlights, and small and dingy bars with gaudy signs. With my eyes on the ground, I hastened my steps across the worn-out streets. I stopped and turned around because a loud noise. A bar door banged open and a man was chased out. A woman, possibly the bar owner, yelled at him and slammed the door shut. He probably couldn't pay her for the drinks. He staggered in my direction, bumped me on my shoulder, reeled, and fell. Standing still, I looked down at him. He wasn't going to stand up anytime soon. He seemed to be falling asleep. His overgrown and disheveled hair, his partly parted blackish red lips, and his sagging belly under a rumpled shirt. I turned away and fixed my eyes only on what was ahead. I started walking and walking faster. I ran. I wasn't going to turn around, but I couldn't help it. The man was still lying on the ground. I stopped with the curse escaping from my lips. "Mister, you shouldn't sleep here." Plastered, he was already asleep. I shook his shoulders hard. He reeked of the disgusting smell of booze. A familiar smell. "Mister, stand up." He blinked a couple of times, but closing his eyes, he said, "Who are you? You know me?" "No, I don't. But you shouldn't fall asleep here. You have anyone who can pick you up?" I swung his arm around my shoulder and helped him stand up. Leaning on me, he tried to stand up only to fall right back down to the ground. When I tried to help him again, he pushed away my hand, and he fell backward. I stepped closer. "Where do you live? I'll help you get home. Can you please get up?" He looked up at me incredulously and giggled. I pulled his arm, and he pushed me away, and we repeated this a couple of times. We grew tired. When he fell down on the ground, he said, "Just leave me alone so I can just drop dead." He lived in the neighborhood next to where my mom's apartment was. I carried him on my back. I was dog-tired. The drunk guy was heavy. Every step took everything out of me. I was accustomed to the weight of someone drunk. My sister and I used to roam the city looking for my dad. Bars would call us. We would find him in the dark corner of a bar by the roadside with cars whizzing by or under a streetlight in a dingy back alley. As we carried Dad home, my sister and I didn't say a word to each other. Why are we taking Dad home? Wouldn't it be better to leave him there to rot? Why are we carrying him home when all he does is beat us like dogs? We tried hard not to ask these questions to each other. I wasn't like this from the beginning. The man talked in his sleep. "Yes, I get that," I told him. I put him down in the damp, semi-basement room and took a breath. My eyes landed on a broken table and dishes and empty booze bottles and instant noodle packets. I couldn't just leave, not because I was physically drained out. I wish he would wake up and tell me stories even if they were boring stories, but he was asleep, and I slowly got up and headed out to the public housing apartments. I got to the apartment when the sun was about to rise, the darkest hour of the day. The place was quiet. My tired legs were walking toward the apartment 103. The lights were on here and there in the run-down 5-story apartment building. Why were the people up so early? I suddenly heard footsteps coming out of the building door. A woman with her hair tied in a clumsy bundle hurried out, but after seeing me, she cowered. I kept my distance and turned around. I saw a playground. Sitting on a swing, I could see down the outside corridor to apartment 103. I kicked the sand with my shoes and looked up at the 3rd floor. The rusty old swing clanged. Why am I hesitating when I'd run all the way here? My body ached and so did my heart. I had no idea how long I'd been sitting there. I saw someone walking out to the hallway on the 3rd floor. I was too far away to get a look at the face, but she was a skinny, middle-aged woman, with her arms on the railing at the end of the hallway. She looked down on the playground, and she lighted her cigarette. The flame from her lighter flickered but was soon gone. Smoke from the cigarette seeped into the bluish morning air. Without moving a muscle, I looked up at her. The sun must have been out, for things were becoming bright and hazy. The woman stayed as she'd been with her eyes fastened outside, and when she was done with her first cigarette, she took out her second. I wondered if she saw me. She couldn't see my face, but did she wonder what the person was doing in the playground this early in the morning? I gripped the swing chains so that they would not make any clanging sound. The tip of her cigarette glowed repeatedly, growing brighter and dimmer. The sun was coming up under the light of the new day. She smoked her last cigarette, and she turned around and disappeared behind the door. I counted the doors from the very left, 304, 305, 306. That was my mom's place. I walked up and stood where my mom had been standing. The place was littered with cigarette butts, like my mom. I hung my arms over the railing and looked down. I saw the swing where I had sat. I stared at the empty swing moving back and forth. I heard the door of 306 being opened, wiped away my tears, and ran down the stairs. My hand smelled of rust from the swing. Once out of the apartment buildings, I saw the morning coming alive. I walked to the bus stop with the distance growing between me and my mom's place. I had the sudden urge to turn around, but now was the time to go home. This is the 2nd time he's done this, and I'm getting fed up with it. Confront your mom, boy. You got this. Next up, June, July 25th. Finally, we're on to the next day. Right, July 25th, year 22. Suk-jin will call us, right? I got Taehyung's text in the morning. The container was littered with traces of the last night. For the first time in a long while, the place had been crowded with all 7 of us. The mood, however, was too dry to call it a party. I texted him back. Let's wait and see. I felt uneasy the whole time at work. I thought of Hosuk last night and thought about texting him several times. It was solely my fault they would clear out the orphanage earlier than scheduled. If I hadn't dumped those papers in the reporter's lounge, the redevelopment plan would have been at standstill as before. Hosuk knew this too. After work, I headed to 2-Star Burger. I saw Hosuk from the window. He wasn't serving a customer or working at the cashier, he was just sitting on one of the chairs in the joint. Our eyes met. Hosuk saw me but turned his eyes away. I walked around the building, waiting for him to get off work. Hosuk walked out on crutches. Yesterday he had dressings on his ankle, but today he had a cast on. Did it get worse? Hosuk didn't answer. I slowed down to walk with Hosuk. Maybe you should take a cab. Hosuk still didn't say a word. It was the first time ever for me to feel this uneasy around him. Are you off work now, or are you still on the clock? Is something wrong? Are you going to join the protest for the orphanage? Hosuk stopped. Namjoon, I'm going to go by myself. Hosuk looked emotionless. The Jung Hosuk I knew wasn't like this. I knew what the orphanage meant to Hosuk. I'm so sorry. It's all because of me. My words had no beginning or ending. But there must be something I can do. Hosuk let out a sigh and said, You? Do what? And he couldn't continue. There was implied blame in that silence. How are you better off than us who live in the orphanage, when you live in a container village soon to be demolished? I knew that he wasn't blaming me, he was raging against his helplessness. Namjoon, you should go. Hearing his tired voice, I stopped, and I watched until it became a blur. So, like, he's just mad at the situation, he's not mad at Namjoon, because Namjoon's in the same situation, just not on as massive of a scale. July 31st, J-Hope's entry. A couple of days ago I rode a rocket. It was the day after I called in sick, with my leg in a cast. I was nothing but a nuisance at work and in the workroom. I woke up in the morning, but there was no place I should be, and nowhere I could go to. I went out simply out of habit. Also, because it was hot, my rooftop room was getting stiflingly humid from the bridge over the stream. I was watching rockets being launched when I had a sudden impulse to go down to the station. I bought a ticket for a rocket. I didn't have in mind to go see a big cosmopolitan awesome city of historical relics or vast nature. I didn't pack my bag with a destination in mind. I just wanted to go somewhere that wasn't Songju. I didn't get on the rocket with high expectations, and with a cheap ticket in mind, I got on the train like a piece of baggage to be carried off without any intention or destination. I didn't want to think about anything. I wished I didn't have a problem, and nothing required a solution. My ankle hadn't gotten better because I hadn't been going around places to plead for the orphanage. My ankle was now more swollen. I tried compression bandages on it, but they didn't help much, so I was just in a cast. There was not even a glimmer of hope to have an orphanage relocated. Well, it was obvious someone like me couldn't do a thing about it. I thought Seokjin was my last hope, but he was stone-hearted. The train's destination was Hagak, a place for a new 2-star burger joint. I hadn't decided to work there yet. I chose the place among the names at the train station because I was familiar with it. The rocket ride would take 2 hours, and the city was about the same size as Songju. The rocket ran along a stream. After passing City Hall, it ran along the area designated for new city development, and it made a sharp turn and Songju disappeared from my sight. I didn't look back. I kept my eyes ahead. My first impression of Hagak was that it resembled Songju but livelier. I rushed off the platform, but after that, I rambled slowly behind people. Walking slowly was so not like me. But I walked so slowly that my speed interfered with the flow of the crowd. I acted as if I was determined to do things that I wouldn't usually not do. I moved with complete disregard for the people around me. I ate spicy food, which I usually didn't eat, and I paid without saying the food was good. When no one was on the street, I spat on the ground. Following the online map, I got to the place for the new store. It was on the first floor of a building next to a high school. Next to it were a stationery store and a 24-hour gimbap place. It was ridiculously similar to the surroundings of the Songju burger joint. While wondering where I would live if I were to work here, I bumped into someone. I'm sorry. I stopped myself mid-sentence, and I glared at him to say it was my fault. Look where you're going. Chung-ho Sok in Hagak would do whatever he felt like for 24 hours. He was a punk, idiot, and jerk. I imagined this jerk for 5 seconds. Aren't you Hosuk? I knew him. We were in the same dance club in middle school, and we had worked together in a 2-star burger joint in high school. I realized name Hagak was familiar because of him as well. He had kept in contact even after he'd moved to Hagak. 1 or 2 months ago, he had texted, "We are pushing ourselves to death to get ready for a performance at Hagak Cultural Center this summer. The performance was tonight, and we will be on for a week. If you have time, come and see it tonight." The Hagak Cultural Center was right next to the building of a new burger joint. I waited 2 hours to see the show, which ended up being so-so. It had some good parts and parts which could be better. For each move, I wondered how I would have done it, or changed it. After the show, my friend came over, quietly asked, "How did you like it?" I gave him 2 thumbs up as I got up from my seat. "But what brought you here to Hagak?" I pointed outside and said a 2-star burger joint will open in the next building. I was thinking about working there. My friend was elated. 2 members of our team who were super good at choreography moved away. If you come, you can save us. In no time, his fellow dancers gathered, and he introduced me as someone who would join the team. Taken aback, I said it wasn't the case, but they all said hi. I was serious when I said that nothing had been decided and that I hadn't made any decisions yet. My friend said he was teasing, but he still had me join them for dinner, and he asked again, "How did you like our performance?" I showed him the irrefutable 2 thumbs up and mentioned what each member was good at, 1 member at a time. When I did, their eyes twinkled. They listened and asked questions. Some showed me the videos of their dance and some asked more questions. They talked about their favorite dancer and even showed me some of their moves. So I missed the train. I stayed at Hagak, I stayed at my friend's place and went to see their show every day. Chung Hosok in Hagak was an unpaid team member who did everything from cleaning the floor to checking the schedule to ordering meals and so forth. I worried about what was happening in Songju from time to time. The redevelopment plan was still in the news, and I worried about what was taking place with the orphanage. One day I bumped into someone who worked for the 2-star main office. He asked what I was doing there and said I was just hanging out. He asked if I'd given thought to working at the store there. He added that someone who had started out as a part-timer had moved up to become a store manager and was now studying in America on a company scholarship, which is definitely possible for you too. You should think about it. After he left, I thought about living here as Jung Ho-sok of Hagag. Jung Ho-sok, who would become the manager of a company-operated store, who would go to America, and who would speak English, study, and dance. I saw students flooding out of their school. Were they having makeup classes during vacation? I wondered. The dance team members came over, and after being chummy, they showed me a video and asked, "Can you show us how to do this move?" Namjoon showed up 4 days later. He was waiting for me in front of the building where the burger joint would open. My friends had texted or called me, but I hadn't checked their messages or taken their calls. I hadn't become a punk, idiot, or jerk, but I had become Jung Ho-sok of Hagak. Without even a glance at him, I asked, "How did you find me?" Namjoon said he went to 2-Star Burger. I remembered bumping into the guy from the main office. Maybe that was how the word got out. We sat at a foldable table in front of the convenience store, with a soju bottle, 2 paper cups, and dried squid on the table. Namjoon didn't say a word. I looked at Namjoon. He was always running places, from his work to the library. Since he took the time out to come here, he must have something to say, or have a lot to say to me. He probably wanted to ask me why I was there. I should be at home with my leg in a cast. The problem with the orphanage would work out. We should put our heads together. I should be thinking of my sick aunt. He knew I was having a hard time, but this wasn't going to solve anything. But nothing like this came out of Namjoon's mouth. Without a word, he emptied his cup time after time and let out a long sigh. "Ho-sok, do you remember how we were both late for school and ended up having to clean the classroom together?" I emptied my cup instead of answering. Seokjin cleaned the classroom with us, and you and I couldn't believe how he seemed to be cleaning something for the first time in his life. "Really? I couldn't remember. Why bring that up now?" I asked curtly. "I don't know for sure, but Seokjin must have his reasons, I'm sure. You know him. How he's been too nice." Namjoon went on with what was going on with Seokjin. I downed the cup and thought, things going on with him? Why do I have to worry about what's going on with him? He was born rich, drives an imported car, went to study abroad, and is studying in a university. He has nothing to worry about. Why do I have to understand him? And you should be on my side, Kim Namjoon. You should be worried about me. Instead of saying that, I told him, "I'm thinking about working at this store." I pointed to the place and downed the cup again. It tasted bitter. Namjoon looked at the store where they were redoing the interior. "I heard, so this will be operated by the company? They'll even send me abroad to study." "That's great," Namjoon said, and he picked up his cup. I asked him, "What did you tell your boss at the gas station? You know?" We continued our conversation on and off, downed our cups, picked back up our conversation, which we couldn't keep going. I woke up at my friend's place the next day. I got up only to feel nauseous. How much did I drink, and how did I get here? I must have blacked out. I turned and saw Namjoon on the floor. "How much did you drink?" my friend asked as he walked in the door. "I went to buy instant noodles. You weren't hoping for bean sprout soup or anything, were you?" "Namjoon, wake up." When I shook his shoulder, Namjoon woke up, startled. He looked around, not knowing where he was. He looked at me blankly and asked, "What time is it?" Not even a goodbye. That's so uncool. I limped to the Hagak station. Namjoon waved and ran. "Kim Namjoon, bye!" I yelled, but wasn't sure whether he heard me. Namjoon disappeared into the crowd. I kept walking to Hagak station. It was frustrating because I couldn't go faster. Crutches in my hands got in the way. I finally saw Hagak station in the distance. I remember the conversation I had had with Namjoon the last night. "Tell me, Ho-sok, why does this booze taste so sweet?" They say booze tastes sweet when life is bitter. We need bitter-tasting booze. Jung Ho-sok, you made a good decision. Don't come back to Songju. Go to America, to Europe, and to the moon. I told him. "Don't worry, I'm never coming back." Namjoon picked up his cup. "You promised." I did. And we touched our cups, saying things that Jung Ho-sok of Songju would have never said. I only got to the Hagak station right before the train departed, and the text came. "Jung Ho-sok, keep your word." The train started moving slowly, soon it picked up speed and became a rocket. The rocket that launched from Hagak Station would arrive in Songju Station in 2 hours, and Namjoon would barely make it in time for his shift. I smiled, thinking of Namjoon with his messed up hair, holding the gas pump, and smelling of booze. Speak for yourself, I texted him back. I followed the rocket's path. It grew smaller and disappeared out of sight. I became teary for no reason. I turned and wiped them away. Oh my, laughing and crying at the same time. This is so Jung Hosak of Songju. That's the end of that chapter, bro. That's intense, man. So, the rift has been caused due to the uncomfortable aspects of Jin and him pushing everybody away. Because he's pushed everybody away, everyone else is pushing everyone else away. To the point where Namjoon sounds like he's given up. J-Hope is trying to start a new life because he doesn't want to have anything to do with anybody. And I don't know, it just seems real sus, you know? Like, why is all this behavior happening? It's like the bad vibe is in the air, you know what I mean? So, I don't know, I guess we'll see. That's the end of chapter 6. I hope you enjoyed it. It was an interesting read. It was quite a long read for me. Just the fact that the chapters are so long makes it a little bit harder for me to read. I like the short entries. But I hope you enjoyed it. The next chapter is We Can Laugh When We're Together. And I will continue on with that in the next video. I'll see you guys then.